Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Brittany Unfiltered. Thank you so much for being with me on this beautiful Tuesday. I don't know how you guys feel. I feel like April is flying by. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous that I feel like we're almost a third of the way through April. I feel like it just started, which is kind of awesome, but at the same time, I don't know, 2019 has been going by really quickly, at least for me. But I'm happy to be more towards the springtime. I am done with cold weather. If you know anything about me, you know that I am not a huge fan of cold weather unless I'm on a ski slope. And I don't live near one of those, so that doesn't usually happen for me. So cold weather can be done. I am over it. I am super glad. Actually, I'm really pumped because just a few months ago, we actually moved into our new house, and I did not know that it came with its very own cherry blossom tree. So that was kind of a cool surprise. All of a sudden, we had a cherry blossom tree just blooming away in our backyard, so that's been really fun. So hope you guys are enjoying the start to some warmer weather. If you live up north, I'm really sorry, and I don't understand why you do that. So come down south because it's warmer here. So anyway, but I wanted to talk to you guys today about, I came across an absolutely nutty story. It's probably not the biggest story in the world right now, which frankly I'm kind of okay with because I'm really sick of our news cycles getting saturated by like one or two stories that just get talked about for days at a time and seem to dominate the news cycle. So I came across this one, and it's so wild to me that I almost don't even have like a category in my head to put it in, but here we are. And so I wanted to share it with you guys and kind of get your thoughts on it because I really don't know what to make of this, heads or tails. So apparently over at George Mason University in Virginia, there's a group of students. Hold on. I should back up and preface this. George Mason University recently hired Brett Kavanaugh as a visiting professor. Okay, so SCOTUS nominee, ended up being confirmed to the Supreme Court, whole bunch of controversy surrounding him. So Brett Kavanaugh now sits on the Supreme Court and was hired by George Mason University as a visiting law professor, so not a actual faculty member that teaches courses there all the time or anything, a visiting law professor. And all he's going to do, seriously, all he is lined up to do at this school at the moment is to teach a creation of the Constitution course in England. So not even in Virginia, not even on GMU's Virginia campus, in England. That's all he's going to do. Well, apparently there's a group of students at GMU who have gotten their panties all in a twist about this, saying that it is threatening to their mental health if Brett Kavanaugh is on their campus. So they must have like completely missed the part where he's not actually going to be on their campus. He's going to be in England, which is across the Atlantic Ocean and very far away from Virginia, in case anybody needs a reminder or, an atlas. But they say that the mere fact that he is going to be a visiting law professor and have anything to do with the school is apparently damaging to their mental health. I kid you not. So they've got this petition going right now. It's gotten over 3,000 signatures. All these students are all up in a bunch. There's been like a whole group created to oppose this, and they're speaking out at Board of Visitors meetings. Is this whole big thing, which is absolutely wild to me, because to remind, in case your attention span is like 2 seconds long and you've forgotten, Brett Kavanaugh has never been convicted of anything. He was accused of sexual misconduct by a woman who had absolutely no proof that he had done anything to her. Her stories had more holes in it than a spaghetti strainer that's been shot up by a machine gun. It's absolutely insane. It's ridiculous. There was no proof to any of her allegations. There were so many details of her story that were just completely falling apart. And we went through this whole rigmarole before the U.S. Senate, where all of these Democratic senators were coming out right, left, and sideways and saying how he was a sexual assaulter. But again, never convicted of anything. There was never any proof that he had done anything. As a matter of fact, there was a lot of proof that he hadn't done what she had claimed that he did. And so we went through this whole entire thing back last year, and it was so exhausting and it was so ridiculous. And he ended up getting confirmed to the Supreme Court anyway. So now, months and months later, you have a Supreme Court justice on the highest court of the land who's been hired as a visiting law professor by a prestigious law school to teach a course in England where the Magna Carta was birthed, which is part of the reason why they've got this course in the first place, by the way. And you've got this group of students. I'm going to read some of the things that they actually said too. This is what they're actually claiming they are going through simply because he's got some relation to the school now, even though he's never been convicted of any manner of sexual misconduct. Here's what they're saying. One woman said, "As a survivor of sexual assault, this decision has really impacted me negatively. It is affecting my mental health, knowing that an abuser will be part of our faculty." It's affecting her mental health. That Brett Kavanaugh is going to be teaching a course in England that she doesn't even have to go to. Another female student said, "As someone who has survived sexual assault 3 times, I do not feel comfortable with someone who has sexual assault allegations like these walking on campus." Again, must have missed the part where he's not actually walking on your campus. He's teaching a course in England. Another claimed that the hiring of Kavanaugh threatens the mental well-being of all survivors on this campus. I mean, I read those, and look, if you have survived sexual assault, I genuinely feel for you. That is not something that I have been through in my life, so I genuinely feel for you. But the fact that you're talking about a man who had some unsubstantiated allegations made against him, that is as far as it went. There was no proof that he had done anything. These allegations ended up not being very credible if you look at them based on the facts, if you look at them based on her accounts of what happened and the fact that there were some conflicting details. Nobody else could corroborate this story. Again, we went through this last year. We've been here and we've done this. And this is a man who has never been convicted of anything, but based on the fact that a woman said that he did something to her. Now, months later, we have got an entire group of students at a law school where they supposedly understand the law, which includes the presumption of innocent until proven guilty. So these are law students who are saying that their mental health is being threatened. Here's where it gets insane, though. Here's where it gets just absolutely wackadoodle crazy. So if that were not bad enough, there are actually some members of GMU's faculty who have proposed that the school launch its own independent investigation of the sexual assault claims made against Kavanaugh. So some people in this faculty actually think that GMU, a university, has the authority to launch their own independent investigation into sexual assault claims made months and months ago against a sitting Supreme Court justice. Here's how all of this went down. So GMU President Angel Cabrera was arguing at a meeting last week that Kavanaugh getting tapped in as a visiting law professor was simply a faculty decision because he is a sitting Supreme Court justice. He is fully capable of teaching a course like this, and that it's not indicative of a judicial ruling of his innocence or guilt based on these allegations. It has nothing to do with that this was just a faculty hiring decision because he's a sitting Supreme Court justice and an authority on the subject. He's been confirmed by the U.S. Senate. He hasn't been convicted of anything. That this was not the school ruling one way or the other on his innocence or guilt, because that's not the school's job. Okay, so that's what he came out and said. Professor Bethany, and I'm going to butcher her last name. I have no idea how to pronounce her last name. Letique, I think. Anyway, some professor actually stood up at the meeting and suggested, well, shouldn't we investigate that? She said, he's been accused, and there has not been a full investigation as far that I can see. So she's actually calling, if you can imagine this for a second, you've got a faculty member of a major law school at a major university suggesting that the university investigate Brett Kavanaugh for sexual assault allegations. Now look, I'm not an attorney, but does that not seem a little off to you? That somebody is suggesting that a university actually launch an independent investigation into a sitting Supreme Court justice because what authority? I'm not seeing where you're getting that. And I'm not seeing how this whole thing is just absolutely crazy. And the reason that I bring it up and the reason that I'm kind of leading off my show today with this story is because I kind of want to get into this whole dynamic that we've got on our college campuses right now, wherein stuff like this is actually being presented as the norm. There are people on campuses like this, students, faculty members, who actually think that this is normal, who actually think that this is acceptable, and don't see anything wrong with saying, well, this threatens my mental health, or, it's this victimization complex, and now we're going to, the school is going to investigate it, even though it has nothing to do with the school. It's absolutely insane. So I wanted to talk about that because I also came across another story today, and this one is actually from the College Fix, and it's about a list of complaints, bias complaints, that have been filed at Michigan State University this year, and it kind of ties in, again, with this whole victimization complex, this whole idea that you can be offended by anything, that you can be triggered by anything, and that suddenly is a legitimate victimization, and you have a right now to seek some sort of I guess, I don't even know what, because I can't even tell what these people want most of the time, just to complain for the sake of complaining, to allege bias for the sake of alleging bias. I'm not even sure what the end game is here, but here are some of the complaints at Michigan State from the College Fix. Got a whole article up on their website about it, and I'm going to read off some of these because they are so ridiculous. It really shows the state that we have gotten to on some of our college campuses when it comes to this victimization complex. So again, story from the College Fix. Apparently, there have been about 35 different bias incidents that have been reported so far this year at Michigan State University. The chief crazy one of which is that apparently there was a student who filed an actual honest-to-God bias complaint. He didn't just complain on Facebook or something. He filed a bias complaint with the school because his roommate was watching a Ben Shapiro video on his laptop. Now, does it get any nuttier than that? This student actually filed a bias complaint with the school because his roommate, on his roommate's laptop, was watching a Ben Shapiro video, and apparently this student felt threatened by that. Rather than laugh in this fool's face, which is exactly, I think, what I probably would have done and probably would have gotten in trouble for it, because we can't do that anymore. We can't laugh at somebody for being a complete and total moron. Instead of laughing in this guy's face, the university apparently actually put an investigator on this complaint to investigate it and told the student that he could actually ask for a room change if he would like one. So again, rather than look at this guy and go, I'm sorry, you're complaining because your roommate was watching a video of a political commentator that he may or may not like on his own laptop. That's all he was doing. Rather than say, that is the most ridiculous, stupidest thing I've ever heard, the university then takes it another step and validates that by saying, okay, that's fine, we're going to get an investigator in on this, and you can actually ask for a room change if you feel threatened. What? Here's where this just starts to lose me, because I'm 10 years out of college, okay? I graduated in 2010, so this May will be 9 years, so almost 10 years outside of college. I'm really interested because I know that I've got some 18 to 35-year-olds, people kind of within my age range here, some that are still in college and some that have more recently graduated college who follow this page and watch this show, but I'm really interested to hear the opinions of some people who've been out of college a little bit longer. So if you're, I really want to hear your opinion, and send me a message or write in the comments, because I'm really interested to know, when did this start? When did this kind of nonsense start? I mean, when did we become so incredibly fragile that something like your roommate watching a video of a person that you don't politically agree with is so triggering to you that you have to file a bias complaint? And not only that, but that we have created a culture in which the university's response to that is, okay, that's legitimate, poor little you, we're going to put an investigator on it, and we're going to coddle you, and we're going to treat this like a legitimate thing. When did we add legitimacy to this? When did we start recognizing this as an actual way to make your point, or an actual thing to complain about? Because I will tell you, as someone who I went to William and Mary in Virginia, and we had this whole big thing. I remember back when I was there, there was this whole big controversy because I guess they would have been progressives. The word progressive wasn't necessarily as in vogue back then now as it is now. But I guess some more progressive left-wingers or whatever wanted to remove the cross out of the chapel on campus, which is this big historical chapel. It's a really, really old school. And the Alumni Association got involved and said, no, you can't do that. It was this whole big thing. That was the biggest controversy that we had. Okay. And that was like mind-blowing back then. We didn't have this kind of stuff. We had some liberal professors. I will give you that. I'm not saying that it wasn't leaning very liberal at the time, because it definitely was. I think a lot of colleges have been for a long time, but we didn't have this. I don't remember anything like this. This seems to be something that is almost kind of popped up overnight. And I want to say that a lot of it is due to the advent of social media and to people's ability to sort of gin these things up, right? And to find validation in their insanity by talking to one another online and by getting these things stirred up online. It seems to be very related to what has simultaneously been our ability to communicate even more with one another, and yet the devolution of communication and our ability to communicate effectively and to share actual information, to have an actual exchange of ideas. We've kind of been able to create these echo chambers here with one another, and I think that's what this is tied to, because I am telling you, before Facebook was a thing, definitely before Twitter was a thing or Instagram or any of this stuff, we did not have this. This was not a thing on my campus 10 years ago. And I kind of want to know from people who have been around, because I'm seeing all of this through the lens of a 30-year-old, all right? So somebody who, 50, 60, 70 years old, I think might be able to look at this, and please explain to me, when did we get to this point? When did we, because this does seem kind of like an overnight sensation. Here's some other bias incidents that were filed at Michigan State that were just utterly ridiculous. There was a student who filed a report after a fellow student supposedly misgendered Bruce/Caitlyn Jenner. So that's all that happened. This guy apparently misgendered Bruce/Caitlyn, and it riled up another student so bad that they had to file a bias report. There was a discarded game of hangman left on a whiteboard in a residence hall. The word South had been the last one played. Somebody filed a bias incident over that, claiming racism. An MSU student found an Instagram photo where some young women were debating whether one of them looks Indian. Those women were not connected to MSU, an investigation found. Another student complained twice in 3 days that someone posted a cartoon making fun of liberals in a residence hall, and it offended her. So she filed a bias complaint. There was a staff member that overheard another staff member asking someone, "Have you ever been to Africa?" When confronted, the two staffers said they were simply quoting the 1997 teen movie Good Burger, which I actually remember. Good movie. So these are bias incidents, right? These are the things that people are actually complaining about as acts of bias. And Michigan State is validating these by actually investigating them. Apparently, they could not give the College Fix an estimate on how much money it takes to do all of this stuff, but it must take something, because they've admitted that they have at least one full-time staffer whose entire job it is to look into this nonsense. Bias incidents. Bias incidents like finding a game of hangman on a whiteboard. Look, and I think that there are two issues at play here, both of which are disturbing. I don't know which one is more disturbing. The first of which is there's a chance that people are actually legitimately, honest to God, offended by this stuff. That they're not making this up, that this is actually something that offends them, in which case I really fear for our generation and I really fear for our country, because if this is all that it takes to get you all riled up and to make you file bias incidents, finding games of hangman on a whiteboard or seeing an Instagram photo from people that weren't even related to your school, it turns out, if that's all it takes, we are in serious trouble. We are in serious trouble, because let me tell you something, Pumpkin, when you get out in the real world, that is the least of your problems. All right. When you're talking about things, golly, if I kept track of every single thing that ever offended me during the workday or during just going about the world. I mean, I go to Walmart and I'm offended by what I see half the time. So, I mean, if you want to talk about being offended, we all have things that might rub us the wrong way, or we might look at and go, I don't really care so much for that. But if you're going to freak out every single time it happens, then you are in for a serious world of hurt when you get out into the actual world. I'm telling you. So I have to believe that this is not all college students. And I have to believe that, you know, issue number 2 is that this is not really about being offended. That this is not really about something that has genuinely threatened you or triggered you, or this is not something that actually bothers you. That we have created a society, particularly in the world of academia, particularly in these little bubbles where we put investigators on things and we hold meetings on things and town halls on things, and everybody gets their say no matter how ridiculous their complaint is, and that we actually entertain nonsense like this. That we have created an environment in which people actually want to be offended. They're not actually offended. They're not actually threatened. We sort of have got this system of rewarding people who come up with something to be offended by. All right, now everybody wants to be, everybody wants to be a champion for something. Everybody wants to have a voice in something. And I understand it, because at this age, and I remember it like it was absolutely yesterday, at this age, you're talking about, you're kind of coming into your own and you're trying to find an identity. And I think that that's an important thing. I think that that's a really important thing. That's an important age. You're trying to figure out who you are and what you want to be and what you want to do with the rest of your life. And that's a good thing. But we're kind of creating a system that says, okay, in that passion, in that drive to figure out who you are, we're now going to reward you simply for being a really loud voice. We're going to reward you for making a big deal out of nothing. We're going to reward you for having a cause. Doesn't matter how stupid your cause is. Doesn't matter how ridiculous your complaint is. We're going to reward you for having one. All right. So I think, again, whether this is an actual example of somebody being offended, or whether this is simply being offended for the sake of being offended, I think we have a serious problem. And it's starting on college campuses. And the trouble is that there used to kind of be this theory that when college kids graduate from college and get out in the real world, that things sort of change. All right, that they start, maybe adopting a different point of view or something, because, they kind of get out in the real world. They learn some real life lessons. They start making a salary. The government starts taking a lot of money from that salary. And so their way of thinking kind of changes. I think that that's still somewhat true. I don't think that it's largely true. And I don't think that it's something that we can rely on anymore. And a lot of that is shown by this push for socialism among young people. It's not just college students. They're getting out of college and they're taking this nonsense with them. This idea that it's all about me and it's all about what I want and all about what I'm offended by and all about me. And they are actually using that in the real world. Here's another good example. 60 Minutes just did an interview with a med school student. I'm going to play a clip here, who claims that free college tuition will help him focus on learning. Here's the clip.
Do you think this is going to make you a better doctor?
I think without a doubt it'll make me a better doctor.
How does it affect that?
For one, I won't be working while I'm in school. I can focus on learning the medicine and being good at it.
And that pressure isn't on your shoulders?
There's none.
So this guy's name is Joe Babinski. He is a med school student at the New York University School of Medicine, which recently announced that it's going to go tuition free. So whole school is going to go tuition free. Whole School of Medicine, at least, is going to go tuition free. This is something that they announced a little while back and have finally implemented. They say that it's going to take about $600 million in order to pull this off. They've got about $450 million of that supposedly raised already from private donations. A lot of this is coming from basically scholarship giving, right? Look, if you want to donate money to scholarships to help kids go to school for free, more power to you, as far as I'm concerned, because I've always said, that if this is going to happen, it should be done through private donations. It should not be done through government mandates. So I'm all for that. It's your money. You can do with it whatever you want. My question, of course, is what happens when that $600 million runs out? Assuming that they even raise the $600 million, because they haven't even gotten the $600 million yet. They've only gotten about 2/3 of that. But they're going ahead and launching this free tuition program anyway. And the whole gist is that if we give these kids free tuition, it takes the pressure off their shoulders of having to pay for it so they can focus on learning, which is what this guy says in this video. The problem that I have, again, You want to donate a bunch of money to a school so that kids can go to school for free. Far be it from me to tell you that you can't do that. It's your money, you go right ahead. The problem that I have is that it creates this idea in somebody like Babinski's mind that just simply is antithetical to the way that the world works. All right. The only thing that I could think of when he says, well, it's going to help me focus on learning. The pressure is off. If I don't actually have to pay for it, then I can just focus on learning. Well, you know what? I could focus on getting real good at learning a second language if I didn't have this pesky mortgage that I had to pay all the time. I could get real good at my job if I didn't have to worry about actually making deadlines or putting in the right hours, if I didn't actually have to worry about earning the money that it takes to keep a roof over my head and food in my mouth and support my family. There's a lot of things that I could get real good at. There's a lot of things that I could focus on. I could focus on enjoying life. I could focus on the feel of sand between my toes. But guess what? Life doesn't actually work that way. So again, when I say that this is the kind of stuff that people are taking out into the world because they're learning them in these institutions, this is exactly what I'm talking about. This idea that, well, somebody can just hand you something for free and it'll free you up to focus on what you want to focus on because somebody else is footing the bill for that, right? And then you get out in the real world and it's the same thing with housing. Gosh, if only I didn't have to focus on this housing situation so much, I could do more charity work. Well, that very well may be true, but somebody has to pay for it. All right, this does not just come for free. All right? I don't know. We're in this twilight zone where we've accepted this idea that, again, money must just grow on trees and we just pluck $100 bills off of it and somebody else is responsible for growing the dumb thing. There was another student that 60 Minutes interviewed. I'm going to play that clip because this one right here also is indicative of exactly what I'm talking about.
How much did you have to borrow for your first year?
I borrowed $76,000, and if I were to pay that off on a 10-year plan, it would be $100,000 by the time I paid it off.
Wow, and that's just your first year?
That's just my first year.
It's unfathomable.
Yeah.
So again, you see this idea, right? You see this idea that it would just really be a huge help to me if I did not have to bear the cost of this totally voluntary school that I chose to go to of my own free volition. So you got this young woman now, right, who says that, okay, if she has to pay the $76,000 in loans back over the next 10 years, it's going to end up being $100,000. Well, Peaches, that's called a loan. That's called a loan. Wait till you buy your first house because it's an even bigger one most of the time. Again, you step up, choose to go to med school or whatever you choose to do. But let's take this case. You choose to go to med school. This is totally voluntary. Nobody's making you do it. You choose to go to med school. You choose to take out the amount of money that it's going to take for you to go to med school. When you sign that paper, it's got your interest rate on it. You know what it's going to be. Unless you're a complete and total idiot, you do the math and you say, this is how much I'm taking out and this is how much I'm going to ultimately end up owing if I pay it back over a set amount of time. These are things that you voluntarily sign up for. You did this. Nobody put a gun to your head and said, you absolutely have to do this. We're going to force you to go to med school. We're going to force you to take out this money. You did that voluntarily. So claiming that it is somehow, oppressive to you or, just a ridiculous burden to put on you that you now have to pay back for the investment that you made in yourself voluntarily, and that somebody else should now pay it for you so that you don't have to worry about the burden of doing it, is insane. It is absolutely insane. Because again, that is not how the world works. That is not how the world works. If I go out and I decide that I'm going to go buy a Lamborghini and I'm going to take out $1 bajillion to pay for the dumb thing, and then I say, golly, it would really be nice if I could just drive this thing in sunny weather with my hair flapping in the breeze and somebody else paid for it so that I don't have to deal with the burden of paying it back with interest like I signed up to do when I bought it, nobody would take me seriously. Or maybe some people would, and that scares me even more, to be honest with you. But this idea that, again, yes, college is expensive. And absolutely, I am one of those that I don't think that the solution lies in free college. I think that the solution is to actually put more of an emphasis on trade schools, because I think that we have way overemphasized four-year colleges, that we have put a lot of pressure on kids at 17, 18 years old to take out massive amounts of loans in order to go to school and change their major 3 times because they have no idea what they want to be, and end up getting out of school and not even using the degree that they bought. So I am a huge proponent of scaling back this push for college degrees. Some people need to go to college. Other people don't need to go to college. Let's just be honest. Some people need to go into the military, quite frankly. Other people need to go to a trade school and make really, really good livings as mechanics or as electricians. You can make amazing amounts of money, but we've gotten into this idea where everybody now has to go to college, and so we're pushing it. So I am more in that persuasion, okay? I am more in the camp of maybe we scale back this idea that every single person has to go to college, and that would help our student loan debt issue. But if you are going to take out student loans, if you are going to go down that road, if you are going to sign up for those, it is your responsibility to pay them back, because nobody else made you do that. So, and by the way, I'm looking at it here with my little notes, because one thing that I found out when I was researching with this story is I kind of wanted to know, okay, well, you always hear doctors and lawyers, right? You always hear that those are the ones who make just bukus of money. It's kind of a stereotype, but I wanted to know, golly, you're talking about $76,000 paid over 10 years is going to end up being $100,000. Did you know that the average pediatrician or family practitioner are typically the lowest paid in the doctor scale when it comes to average salaries for doctors? Those are the ones on the lower end of the totem pole. Their average salary is $180,000 a year. Now, you don't get that the minute that you graduate from med school, right? You got to climb the ladder. But once you get to that point, you are making $180,000 a year on average. If you are at the top of the doctor scale and you're making the most, that would be an orthopedic surgeon. They make about $520,000 a year. So please spare me your woe is me stories about how you took out student loans to become a doctor, because again, that was totally voluntary. You're going into a profession that does allow you to make a lot of money. Oh, and by the way, if we're going to apply this theory that somebody else is going to pay for your school so that you can focus on learning, then I suggest that you get out of college and that you don't take a salary so that all of your patients can focus on healing rather than focus on paying you, if we're going to apply this across the board, right? All that to say, I think that stories like this, and where we started with the perpetually offended, this idea of constant victimization, this idea that everything in life revolves around you, that you can file bias incidents when something rubs you the wrong way, that you can claim that your mental health is being threatened simply because somebody has been accused of something that they were never convicted of. This idea that you hear a common theme throughout these things, don't you? The common theme here is me. It's all about me. It's all about me, and it's all about how I feel and what bothers me and what would be good for me and what would be really helpful for me and how somebody else can help me. That is the common theme here. So when it comes to socialism, and when it comes to, I've seen it time and time again among people that I tend to value their opinion when it comes to politics and current events. There seems to be this kind of shock, especially among conservatives, especially among those who value the free market and capitalism, this sort of shock that socialism is taking root. How in the world could anybody be a fan of a system that has resulted in the death of more than 100 million people worldwide and has failed every single time it's ever been implemented? This is why. This right here is why. Because it's all about me. It's rooted in selfishness. It's not rooted in economics. It's not rooted in mathematics that work. It's not rooted in reason and logic and looking at a piece of paper and saying, gosh, this adds up and this doesn't. It's not rooted in that. It is rooted in the idea that the entire universe is centered around me and what I want and what is good for me and making things equal for me. So when I come back, I'm going to take a really, really quick break here. We're going to talk about socialism, some of the tie-ins that I see here, and why that is destined to fail regardless of whether or not you think it would work out for you. So stick with me, guys. I'm going to be back after a really, really short break. Hang with me. Hey guys, welcome back to Brittany Unfiltered, talking about socialism today and some of the roots that it has on college campuses and why socialism has become this burgeoning sort of theory on the left, and why so many different people across our universities, so many young people are really starting to gravitate towards that over the free market, and been talking a little bit about this idea, this environment that we have cultivated on our college campuses, that it's not just about money. Right? We tend to think of socialism, we equate it with money, we equate it with things like universal income and free stuff, but its roots go deeper than that. This isn't just about money. This is about a much deeper idea that everything in life is about you. It's about you and your preferences and what satisfies you and what bothers you, and making sure that nothing in life ever ruffles you or touches you. And I think that is the root that has allowed this idea of socialism, and this idea that everything in life should revolve around me and what I need, even if it puts the burden on somebody else to provide that for me. That is what has allowed this to take root. And we are coddling this idea in our universities. Okay, we are perpetuating this idea through systems that allow you to, to, again, like we were talking about at Michigan State, to file stupid bias incidents over absolutely nothing, and to actually give that credence, to actually validate and say that, that's perfectly fine. And that is a legitimate way to feel, and that we're going to pay attention to you and your feelings. So again, you hear constantly among proponents of socialism, and I see it all the time on socialist Twitter. It's something that AOC talks a lot about, and this idea, you will hear it over and over and over again like a mantra, and that is that the system is broken. All right, they don't really get into a lot of specifics. Sometimes they do, but it's not really so much like a here's what is broken and here's how to fix it, because a lot of their policies and a lot of the problems that they point out are really vague. And I mean, you read the Green New Deal and you see that, right? Well, we just need railroads. Okay, well, that's not a policy. That's just you saying words. Okay, so, but you hear over and over again, the system is broken. The system is broken. No, the system is not broken. The system is not broken. We are broken. Our societal worldview is broken. All right, the way that we view ourselves, the way that we view our place in the world, the way that we view personal responsibility, the way that we view our lives and our choices and how that affects us and everybody around us, that is what is broken. It is not the system, it's us. Okay, and it's what we are teaching future generations. That is what is broken. It's the same exact thing that I see with immigration. All right, it's the same exact thing. And I'm not going off on a wild tangent here, I promise. It's the same thing I see with immigration. I absolutely hate it when people say our immigration system is broken. We must fix our broken immigration system. No, our immigration system is not broken. Our immigration system is actually pretty darn good. We do have some things that I think we could tweak. I do think that we could make our legal immigration system a little more streamlined and a little easier to understand. I've seen people try to navigate it the right way, and it does get very confusing, and there's a lot of red tape. I think that stuff like that can be tweaked. I'm not saying that it can't be improved upon. I'm saying it's not broken. The problem with our immigration system is that we are unwilling to enforce the laws that we already have on the books. Our laws are not bad. Our laws are not wrong. Our laws are actually very good and very generous, but we are not enforcing them. We are processing unaccompanied minors as unaccompanied minors who shouldn't be, because the definition of an unaccompanied minor is somebody who does not already have family living in the United States. That's not how we're processing them. We have laws on the books that say if you come here illegally, you are subject to removal, and we're not removing them. As a matter of fact, we've got a revolving door that just allows them to come and stay. We have got a definition of asylees and refugees that we are not adhering to. It is a very, very simple definition. You can look it up, and we are not adhering to that. We don't have a broken immigration system. We have a failed immigration enforcement system. That is what we have. And that is voluntary. All right. So it's not the system that's broken. The same exact thing is true of the free market and capitalism. It is not capitalism that is broken. If capitalism and the free market ain't working out for you, it's not capitalism's fault. I can tell you that for sure, because the free market is the only thing that's ever worked. Socialism has historically never worked. You cannot point to a single country that has true socialism that has worked. You cannot do it. Socialism fails every single time. It failed in the Soviet Union. It has failed in Venezuela. It fails every single time. For example, I'm going to give you a really good example of it not being the system that has failed. So New York City has implemented a $15 minimum wage law. So you hear this all the time, and wait, because it's going to last about 3 seconds, and then it's going to be a $20 or $25 minimum wage law. Mark my words, because $15 is not going to cut it for very long, I can tell you. So New York City implemented a $15 minimum wage law. It just went into effect in December of 2018. So we're talking, 4 or 5 months ago? Has not been around for very long. Here's what it has already resulted in, according to the New York Post new report that just came out. The minimum wage law was implemented in December 15, and so far, full-service restaurants recorded a 1.6% job loss, which is the first recorded annual loss in 2 decades. They did a survey of employers post minimum wage law implementation. The survey found that nearly 1/3 of respondents planned to eliminate jobs. The majority said they were raising prices due to the increased minimum wage. Shocker. Who could have possibly seen that coming? It's just, golly, if only somebody had predicted this. It's ridiculous. Employers who responded to the survey said that they plan to continue cutting jobs and hours because of this policy. A total of 76.5% of full-service restaurant respondents reduced employee hours. 36% eliminated jobs in 2018 to get ready for this mandate. 75% of limited service restaurant respondents reported that they will reduce employee hours, and 53% said that they will eliminate jobs in 2019 as a result of the wage increases. Congratulations, New York City. You just cost an awful lot of people their jobs. We saw the same exact thing happen at Whole Foods. Amazon said that they were going to increase their hourly wage. We saw that for about 2 seconds. They increased everybody's hourly wage. Oh, but wait, then they went and cut people's hours. And so employees started coming out and saying, okay, well, yeah, you increased the wage because it gave you this nice little publicity bump. Whole Foods is increasing wages. But then you cut all of our hours so that some of us are making even less than we were before you raised the minimum wage. Okay, we saw the same exact thing happen with Obamacare. When Obamacare came in and said, you've got to start giving everybody above 30 hours health insurance. Okay, well, what happened? A whole bunch of employers dropped their employees to below 30 hours because they couldn't sustain the cost of providing that much more health insurance. That was not in their budget. You see it over and over and over and over again. This does not work. You want to talk about a failed system? You want to talk about the system is broken? This is a broken system because it happens every single time. It happened in Seattle. It has happened in places like San Francisco. Any city that has enacted these minimum wage laws to try to force this, it has failed every single time. So we need to start looking at, is it really the system that's broken? It is not the system that is broken. It is the idea that we are cultivating an environment of everything being about you, everything being about the individual, not individual liberty, not individual freedom, not individual personal responsibility, but individual desire, individual want, and individual need. And the idea that it's not your individual job to go out and get that for your individual self. It's someone else's job to provide it for you simply because you want it. So I see that over and over and over again in our universities. It's not that we're teaching them bad economics. That's part of it. But it's not that we're teaching them bad math. It's that we are teaching them that everything in life is about them, and it's the height of selfishness. It is the height of envy, that you envy what someone else has, and rather than go out and work for it. You know, I mean, I grew up I grew up on stories in my family. The one that we were told most often was of my grandfather, who grew up literally dirt floor poor in southern Georgia, as poor as church mice. And he didn't go to college. He couldn't afford to go to college. Back then, your choices were you either graduate high school and get a job, you graduate high school and go into the military, or you graduate high school and you go to college if you could afford it. And that's if you graduated high school. He couldn't afford it. So he ended up going into the military. He did his 4 years. He got out. He got a job at a phone company, spent the next 30 plus years at that phone company, and built a career there, and ended up dying pretty wealthy. He actually did really well in the real estate market because he was a smart investor. But again, you hear stories like this of generations that came before, of these self-made people who understood that this is not going to be easy. People aren't going to hand this to me. I've got to do this on my own. That is not what we are teaching on college campuses these days. And I really fear that this is where this is going to lead. The system is not broken, y'all. But it's going to be, if this is the path that we keep walking down. It's going to be. So all that to say, that's my show for today. I appreciate you guys hanging with me. I know I get real riled up and passionate about that particular subject, but I really am glad that you guys stuck with me today. Thank you so much for being here. I hope that you come back next Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, live on Facebook and YouTube. Make sure you send me your comments and your messages and feedback. Love hearing from you guys. Hope y'all have a great rest of your week. Also, follow me, by the way, on Twitter at Real Britt Hughes if you have Twitter. If not, don't bother, it's not worth it. But if you have Twitter, follow me at Real Britt Hughes, and I will see you back here next time.